Most people think when you return a tool to Lowe's, it gets checked, put back on the shelf, and sold to the next customer. That assumption feels logical, but it's mostly wrong. This video breaks down what actually happens to return tools at Lowe's, step by step. After you hand the item back at the counter, it explains where those tools really go, why most never make it back to the sales floor, and who ends up with them instead. Some returned tools are resold, but they are the exception, not the rule. The majority follow a completely different path that most shoppers never see. By the end of this video, you'll understand how Lowe's handles returns, behind the scenes, and why the final destination of most return tools surprises almost everyone. What Lowe's return policy actually allows. When you return a tool to Lowe's, the process is governed almost entirely by policy, not by condition or intent. For most tools, Lowe's allows returns within a 90-day window, even if the box has been opened and the tool has been handled. Other product categories follow different timelines, but tools are treated as relatively flexible items when it comes to customer returns. That flexibility exists for one main reason: customer experience. Big box retailers compete heavily on convenience and trust. Making returns easy reduces friction at the point of sale and encourages customers to buy without hesitation. Lowe's would rather accept a higher volume of returns than risk losing sales by making the process difficult or restrictive. At the return counter, the goal is speed and consistency. Employees are trained to verify that the return falls within policy, confirm proof of purchase when required, and process the refund. What they are not doing is performing mechanical inspections, stress tests, or performance checks. Stores are not equipped, staffed, or incentivized to evaluate whether a tool has been lightly used, heavily used, or potentially compromised. This is where many assumptions break down. Customers often imagine a back room where returned tools are examined, tested, and graded before being resold. In reality, that level of scrutiny would slow operations, increase labor costs, and introduce inconsistency across thousands of locations. The return policy is designed to be uniform, not diagnostic. Once the return is completed, the tool immediately shifts from being a retail asset to a logistical problem. It now occupies space, requires handling, and carries uncertainty. From Lowe's perspective, every additional step spent evaluating or holding that tool reduces profitability compared to selling a brand new unit with known condition and full manufacturer backing. It's also important to understand that return policies are written with scale in mind. What might make sense for a single item does not scale across millions of returns per year. Lowe's does not ask, "Can this one tool be resold?" It asks, "What's the most efficient way to handle returns at volume without increasing risk or cost?" That policy framework explains everything that follows. The way Lowe's handles return tools is not about judging quality or fairness. It's about minimizing friction, controlling risk, and keeping the core retail operation moving smoothly. Once you understand that, the rest of the return pipeline starts to make sense. That policy framework is the foundation for everything that happens next, because it explains why Lowe's treats most returned tools as a logistics problem, not a resale opportunity. Why most returned tools never go back on store shelves. Once a tool is returned, many shoppers assume it enters a simple evaluation process and then waits to be sold again. In practice, that assumption doesn't hold up. The decision to keep returned tools off regular store shelves is driven by a combination of risk management, cost control, and operational reality. The first issue is uncertainty. Even when a tool looks clean, there is no reliable way for store staff to determine how it was used. A drill may have been briefly tested, or it may have been run continuously under heavy load. A saw could have been misaligned, dropped, or forced through material it wasn't designed to handle. These kinds of stresses don't always leave visible marks, but they can shorten a tool's lifespan or affect safety. Selling a returned tool as new exposes Lowe's to repeat returns, customer complaints, and potential safety concerns. One failure can trigger additional refunds, labor costs, and damage to customer trust. From a business perspective, the upside of reselling a single returned tool rarely justifies that risk. Labor cost plays an equally important role. Properly evaluating a returned tool would require inspection, testing, cleaning, repackaging, relabeling, and documentation. Each step takes time, and time scales poorly across thousands of returns. Big box retailers are optimized to move sealed, standardized products quickly, not to Assess used equipment individually. Storage and logistics also factor in. Returned tools must be held somewhere while decisions are made. That space costs money and competes with active inventory. In a high-volume retail environment, holding returned items slows turnover and reduces overall efficiency. Shelf space itself is valuable. Every product on the floor is expected to generate predictable revenue. A returned tool introduces uncertainty into that equation, while a new unit offers consistent margin and manufacturer support. From a planning standpoint, it makes more sense to dedicate shelf space to inventory, with known performance and demand. There is also a brand protection element. Lowe's relies on customer trust in product quality. Mixing return tools into standard retail inventory risks, undermining that trust, even if the tools function properly. Keeping returns out of regular circulation helps maintain clear expectations for shoppers. For all of these reasons, most returned tools are flagged out of the traditional retail system almost immediately. They are not treated as resale opportunities waiting to be rediscovered. They are treated as inventory that needs to be removed efficiently and responsibly. That decision sets the stage for the next step in the process, where Lowe's shifts from retail thinking to liquidation thinking, and why only a small fraction of returned tools ever resurface in stores at all. The small percentage that does get resold in-store. While most return tools are removed from standard retail circulation, a small percentage do get another chance to be sold. These are typically items that show little to no evidence of use and were returned for reasons unrelated to performance, such as buyer's remorse, duplicate purchases, or unopened or lightly opened packaging. These tools are rarely placed back on regular store shelves next to brand new inventory. Instead, they are routed into Lowe's outlet stores, which operate as a separate channel with different expectations. Outlet items are clearly marked, discounted, and sold with disclosures stating they may have cosmetic damage, packaging issues, or be previous returns. This distinction matters. Outlet resale allows Lowe's to recover some value without presenting the item as new or creating confusion for customers. It also reduces liability because buyers understand they are purchasing an open box or returned product, not first-run inventory. Even so, the bar for outlet eligibility is higher than many people assume. Tools with missing accessories, questionable operation, heavy wear, or unclear return histories are usually rejected. If a tool can't be quickly categorized and priced with minimal handling, it's not worth the effort to sell it individually, even at a discount. Another limitation is scale. Outlet stores represent only a fraction of Lowe's total footprint, and inventory is unpredictable. What shows up depends entirely on return patterns, store, locations, and regional logistics. That makes outlets an inconsistent solution for dealing with the volume of returns Lowe's processes every day. Because of these constraints, outlet resale accounts for only a small slice of returned tools. It's a selective outlet, not a catch-all solution. The majority of returns continue moving through the system, away from consumer-facing stores and toward a completely different resale model. That transition marks the point where Lowe's stops thinking like a retailer and starts thinking like a wholesaler, which leads directly into the B-stock and liquidation process. We'll cover next what the B-stock program is and why Lowe's uses it. Once returned tools are filtered out of retail and outlet channels, they move into a system designed specifically for high volume and low friction, the B-stock liquidation model. This is not clearance retail, and it is not meant for individual shoppers. It's a wholesale exit ramp for inventory that no longer makes sense to manage one unit at a time. In a B-stock program, return tools are aggregated instead of evaluated individually. Lowe's groups them by category, region, or return type, then sells them in bulk through third-party liquidation platforms, such as B-stock solutions, direct liquidation, and select liquidation. These platforms act as intermediaries, hosting auctions where buyers compete for entire pallets or truckloads of mixed inventory. The defining feature of this system is efficiency. There is no detailed testing, no cosmetic grading, and no effort to verify completeness at the individual item level. Doing so would defeat the purpose. Instead, lots are sold with limited manifests that describe the general category and estimated condition range, not guaranteed contents. Everything is sold as is. That means no manufacturer warranty, no return rights, and no promise that a specific tool will work. Buyers enter, knowing that some percentage of the inventory may be unused open box, returns, some lightly used, and some incomplete or non-functional. That risk is baked into the price. From Lowe's perspective, this model eliminates several costly problems at once. It removes the need for storage space, minimizes employee handling, reduces liability exposure, and converts unpredictable returns into predictable revenue. Even at steep discounts, bulk liquidation outperforms slow, labor-heavy resale attempts. It's also important to understand that B-stock is not a last resort. For large retailers, it's a core part of inventory management. The system exists because returns are expected at scale, and liquidation is the most rational way to deal with them. Once tools enter this channel, Lowe's involvement effectively ends. Ownership transfers, and whatever happens next depends entirely on who bought the lot and what they plan to do with it. That next stage is where return tools begin to scatter into many different directions, which is what we'll break down next. How? Returned tools are liquidated after you return them. Once a pallet or truckload of return tools is sold through a B-stock auction, those tools leave Lowe's control completely. From that moment on, they are no longer retail products tied to a store, a shelf, or a brand promise. They become wholesale inventory, and what happens next depends entirely on who bought them and why. Most buyers are purchasing blind, at least to a degree. They rely on manifests that list general categories, estimated quantities, and broad condition descriptions. They are not buying a specific drill or saw, they are buying risk, volume, and opportunity. The lower price reflects that uncertainty, and once the auction closes, that risk transfers fully to the buyer. When the shipment arrives, liquidation turns into hands-on work. Pallets are opened, tools are sorted, and items are evaluated one by one. Some tools are immediately usable with minimal cleaning. Others require testing, repair, or missing parts to be replaced. Items that are incomplete or non-functional may still have value, either for parts or for resale further down the chain. This is where multiple layers of resale often happen. A large liquidator may break a truckload into smaller pallets and resell them to regional buyers. Those buyers may further sort and sell individual tools online through small shops, flea markets, or local marketplaces. Each layer extracts value in a different way, but none of it happens inside a Lowe's store. It's also why consumers sometimes encounter returned tools in unexpected places. A tool that started as a return at a big box store may pass through several businesses before it ever reaches another end user. By that point, it may be refurbished, repackaged, or sold strictly as used, with no connection to its original retail sale. This entire system exists because it's efficient. It allows returned tools to keep circulating without clogging retail stores or creating ongoing liability for the original seller. It's not designed for everyday shoppers, and it's not meant to be transparent at the shelf level. It's designed to move volume and recover value quietly and quickly. If this breakdown is helping you understand how retail really works behind the scenes, take a second to like the video and subscribe. It helps the channel, and it lets you know when we break down systems like this. Next, we'll look at who these buyers are, what they're looking for, and why returned tools almost never end up back in the hands of regular shoppers through normal retail channels. Who actually buys? Lowe's returned tools next. The buyers of liquidated Lowe's returns are almost never individual consumers. This system is built for businesses that understand volume, inconsistency, and risk, and know how to turn those factors into profit. The moment returned, tools leave Lowe's through liquidation. They enter a professional resale ecosystem that operates very differently from normal retail. One of the largest buyer groups is independent retailers. These are local discount tool stores, resale warehouses, and surplus outlets that don't rely on uniform inventory or pristine packaging. They are set up to inspect tools, test basic functionality, and sell items clearly labeled as open box, refurbished, or used. Their customers are not expecting perfection. They're looking for lower prices and are willing to accept trade-offs. Another major group is refurbishers and repair-focused businesses. These buyers actively seek out returns because they have the skills and supply chains needed to make repairs economical. A drill with a minor internal issue or a missing accessory might be unviable for a big box retailer, but for a refurbisher, it's an easy fix. Once repaired, those tools can be resold at a margin that wouldn't exist at the retail level. Exporters also account for a significant portion of liquidation purchases. In many international markets, cosmetic flaws, damaged packaging, or discontinued models matter far less than price and basic functionality. Tools that struggle to find buyers domestically can move quickly overseas when sold in bulk. For exporters, liquidation inventory is a steady supply source rather than a gamble. There are also bulk buyers, whose role is redistribution, not resale. These businesses buy large lots, break them down, and resell smaller pallets or mixed batches to other resellers. They may never test a single tool themselves. Their value comes from logistics, sorting, and access, not from individual product performance. Some buyers focus exclusively on parts recovery. Non-functional tools are stripped for usable components, which can then be sold individually or used to repair other units. In this context, even a broken tool still has value, which is another reason liquidation works so well at scale. What all of these buyers have in common is infrastructure. They have warehouse space, labor, tools, and systems designed to handle uncertainty. That's why this market is not open to everyday shoppers. Buying a pallet of mixed condition tools with no guarantees requires capital, space, and tolerance for loss that most consumers simply don't have. This is the key reason returned tools almost never cycle back to regular shoppers through normal retail channels. Once they enter liquidation, they're absorbed into a secondary market built for professionals, not casual buyers. Next, we'll break down what condition these tools are usually in, and why the word returned can mean very different things depending on where and how you encounter the tool later. What condition these tools are usually in. One of the biggest misconceptions about returned tools is the idea that they fall into a single category, either nearly new or completely broken. In reality, liquidation inventory spans a wide range of conditions, and that variability is a core reason these tools are removed from standard retail channels in the first place. At the highest end of the spectrum are unused or barely handled returns. These are tools that were opened, inspected, or briefly handled by a customer, and then returned without being put to work. They may have damaged packaging, missing protective inserts, or light cosmetic marks from handling, but functionally, they are often indistinguishable from new tools. Despite this, retailers still avoid reselling them as new to eliminate risk and maintain consistency. Next are lightly used tools. These may have been used for a short task, a single project, or a test fit before being returned. They often work perfectly, but show visible signs of use, such as scuffs, dust, or residue. From a consumer perspective, these tools might still represent excellent value. From a big box retailer's perspective, they introduce too much uncertainty to sell confidently at scale. Another common category is incomplete returns. These tools may be fully operational but missing key components like batteries, chargers, guards, manuals, or specialty accessories. Even when replacements are inexpensive, the effort required to verify and repackage each unit makes individual resale inefficient. For resellers, incomplete tools can be profitable once parts are sourced or combined from other returns. Then, there are non-functional or damaged tools. Some have internal electrical failures. Others have mechanical damage from misuse or accidents. While these units are unsellable as complete tools, they often still contain valuable components. Motors, switches, housings, and electronic parts can all be reused or resold, which means even broken tools retain some value in the liquidation ecosystem. What makes liquidation challenging is that all of these conditions are mixed together. Buyers do not receive neatly sorted categories. A single pallet can contain pristine open box items, alongside heavily used or non-functional tools. Success in this market depends on experience, process, and the ability to absorb losses while extracting value from the rest. Instead of asking whether a returned tool is good or bad, the more useful question is how many hands it passed through after the return and what happened to it along the way. That context matters far more than the return label itself. With that in mind, the final section explains why this entire system matters to everyday shoppers and how knowing it changes the way you should think about buying tools. What this means for shoppers and why it matters. Understanding what happens to returned tools changes how you should think about the entire return and resale process. When you bring a tool back to Lowe's, you're not placing it back into a simple loop where it gets checked and waits for the next customer. In most cases, you're sending it into a system specifically designed to remove uncertainty from retail stores and push that uncertainty downstream. For everyday shoppers, this explains something many people notice but don't fully understand. You rarely see large sections of returned tools discounted and lined up for sale. That's not because stores are hiding deals or throwing usable products away. It's because managing used or questionable inventory at the retail level introduces costs and risks that outweigh the potential savings for the store. This also helps explain why outlet stores feel unpredictable. One week there's a great deal, the next week there's nothing useful. Outlets don't receive curated inventory. They receive whatever passes basic screening at a given moment. That inconsistency is not a flaw. It's a direct result of how returns actually happen. For shoppers who encounter returned or refurbished tools outside traditional retail, this background is critical. A low price alone doesn't tell you whether something is a good deal. What matters is who handled the tool after it was returned, whether it was tested or repaired, and what kind of return or warranty protection you're actually getting. It also reframes how you think about liquidation deals you see online or in resale markets. These tools didn't fail retail because they were worthless. They exited retail because retail isn't built to manage uncertainty. That distinction matters when you're deciding whether to trust a seller or walk away. At a broader level, this system shows how modern retail really works. Returns aren't an afterthought. They're expected, planned for, and routed through systems designed to keep primary stores clean, fast, and predictable. The value doesn't disappear. It just changes hands. Knowing this gives you an advantage. It helps you avoid bad assumptions, recognize real risk, and understand why some deals exist while others don't. When you see a returned tool in the wild, you'll know it's not about where it came from. It's about what happened after. That awareness is the real payoff of understanding where returned tools actually go. Now you know what really happens. After a tool gets returned to Lowe's, it doesn't quietly go back on the shelf, and it doesn't vanish either. It moves through a system built around speed, risk control, and volume, not second chances. That understanding matters because it changes how you look at returns, outlet deals, refurbished tools, and liquidation finds. Once you see how the pipeline works, the pricing, inconsistency, and availability all start to make sense. If this breakdown helped you see retail a little more clearly, like the video and subscribe for more straight explanations like this. No filler, no myths, just how things actually work behind the scenes. That's it for this one.